The third and final installment of Chapter 10 from Virtual Physical Science, Renewable Energy Sources, Solar, Hydroelectric, Wind, Geothermal, and others. Solar energy. It turns out that almost all of the energy sources we've talked about and will talk about really have their origins in the sun. Fossil fuels came from plants and animals that died millions of years ago, and those animals and plants could not have survived had it not been for the sun. The sun provides the light and heat that most organisms need to survive. Plants change the sunlight directly into chemical potential energy, the third pathway I've shown here, and animals either eat those plants or eat other animals who eat those plants. So in that way, animals and plants get all of their energy from food from the sun. And since fossil fuels are made from animals and plants from millions of years ago, they ultimately have their origins in the sun as well. Any form of other solar energy that we might talk about is obviously coming from the sun. The sun can give us heat up our homes, and heat up water that we can use. The sun can also produce electricity directly in a process I'm going to describe in just a little bit. Wind power, well, wind is actually much of wind is caused by the sun. It's caused by uneven heating of the Earth's surface from sunlight. There are some exceptions. Nuclear energy doesn't really come from the sun. It does come from nuclear elements that were produced by other stars in the past, however. Things like uranium and plutonium were created in nuclear explosion, essentially, that happened when an older star that preceded our solar system exploded in what's called a supernova. When that supernova happened, things like uranium were produced, and the nuclear energy that we get from uranium today can be traced back to that old star. Geothermal energy, which we'll talk about last, is really coming from the inside of the Earth. It really has not much at all to do with the sun. But most of our energy sources, we can tie them back to the sun in one way or another. So the sun gives us energy directly in three ways. It heats up our homes and heats up tanks of water that we can use to take hot showers. We can use sunlight to produce electricity directly. Here at the bottom you can see a little cartoon I drew of a photovoltaic cell. This thing is basically a little device that takes advantage of the photoelectric effect, discovered and explained by Einstein. When light strikes a metal surface, it can eject electrons. And if these electrons can be captured, they serve as an electric current, electricity. The third way we get energy from sunlight is as chemical potential energy stored in plants. Plants know how to do photosynthesis. As you all know, that's how they turn sunlight into food. And then we can eat the plants and get that food. Advantages of solar energy: well, it's renewable. I mean, there's more of it than we could ever possibly need. If we could harness even 1/20th of 1% of the solar energy that strikes the Earth, it would be enough. It would be more than enough to satisfy all of our needs. And there's plenty of it coming every day for free. It's clean. It doesn't produce carbon dioxide or any pollution. And it's local. Solar energy can be collected where you need to use it. You don't have to collect it in one central spot and then transport it to everyone. You can collect it wherever you need it. But there are disadvantages. Our technology isn't very good right now, and the efficiency of converting solar light energy into electricity is very, very low, around 10%. The sunlight is inconsistent. There are clouds. At night there's no sun. And depending on where you are, you may not get enough energy at the time when you need it. And finally, how do we store this energy? If we need to have the lights at night when there is no sun, then we have to store the energy from the light we receive during the day. And most people use batteries for this. Well, that's fine, but batteries can only store a certain amount of energy, and they contain dangerous chemicals, heavy metals that can pollute the environment. Another important alternative renewable energy source is hydroelectricity. And this is actually the renewable energy resource that is used most of all right now. Any hydroelectric energy is energy generated from the movement of water. Either water falls or just simply moves, and as it does, turns a turbine, which, as we know, generates electricity. The advantages to this are that, again, it is a renewable resource. Clouds will bring rain up on high land, and as the rain runs down again, we can use that to turn turbines. So this happens naturally. It's renewable. It's clean. It doesn't produce a lot of waste or carbon dioxide or pollution. But there are disadvantages. Building a dam, which is usually what's done to make hydroelectricity work, displaces people that might live in the valley where the lake is going to form, and it can displace animals and kill other organisms as well. And also, this energy source is dependent on the abundance of rainfall in a particular area. If it doesn't rain one year and there's no water falling downhill, then there's no energy. Wind power. This is very direct. Wind blows on the turbine, and that generates electricity. Advantages, it's clean and renewable. Disadvantages, some people think that big windmills aren't very nice looking, and that if you put a bunch of them up, it ruins the view of the countryside. Also, they do make noise, and some people think that that noise is ugly. Birds can run into trouble if they run into the blades of the windmill. They can be killed. And again, just as with the other renewable sources we've talked about, wind power is inconsistent. You can't guarantee that the wind will be blowing where you need it to be all the time, and so you have to plan around this. Geothermal energy. It uses the heat inside the center of the Earth. Well, not really the center. If you just dig down underground, a few thousand feet in some places, you can find a lot of heat stored down there. Magma, or molten rock from inside the Earth, in some places rises near the surface. Near volcanoes, in geologically active places like in Eastern Africa, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Kenya. In places like Iceland, there's a lot of access to this magma not too deep under the surface. In fact, the country of Iceland gets, I think, all of its energy from geothermal sources. The idea is that you pour water down in a crack somewhere deep underground, that water boils, the resulting steam turns a turbine and produces electricity. Advantages? Well, it's clean, it's renewable. Disadvantages? Well, not many places on Earth are lucky enough to have access to this energy source. Iceland is a very rare exception. There are a few other places on the planet, but most of us aren't so lucky. Alright, please go and read section 10.3. When you get to the end, on page 310, answer questions 1 through 5. I hope you learned something from chapter 10, and I'll see you next time. Kolbeck out.